Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to another deep dive. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today because we're about to sink our teeth into a piece of television that, well, I honestly think it changed the landscape of how we look at antiheroes.
Oh, without a doubt.
Well, yeah, we are, of course, talking about Breaking Bad.
And not just any part of Breaking Bad. We are zeroing in on Season 2, Episode 3. It's titled Bit by a Dead Bee.
Bit by a Dead Bee. It's such a weird, specific title, isn't it?
It really is.
It sounds like something a kid would make up when they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
That is precisely the vibe. It sounds like a flimsy excuse because, well, that's what this entire episode is about. It's about the architecture of the excuse, the art of the lie.
Exactly. And just to set the table for everyone listening, whether you're a diehard fan who's watched this series 5 times or someone who's just fascinated by storytelling mechanics, we have pulled together a massive stack of sources for this.
Yeah, we really dug deep.
We did. We've got the production notes, the original plot summaries, critical essays from places like the AV Club and IGN, and even some actual sociological research on medical ethics and criminal codes to back this all up.
We are definitely going to need all of that because this episode is dense. I mean, it's not the most explosive episode in terms of gunfire, but in terms of character psychology, it is a nuclear bomb.
So let's set the scene. Where are we in the story right now?
Right. So we have to look back at the previous episode.
Yeah, if you recall the previous episode, grilled. It was absolute chaos. High-octane action. Walter White and Jesse Pinkman were kidnapped by the psychotic drug lord Tuco Salamanca.
Right.
They were held hostage in a shack out in the desert.
It was basically a survival horror movie. You had Tuco, who's completely unpredictable and violent. You had his uncle, Hector Salamanca, in the wheelchair, constantly ringing that bell.
That bell is terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you had Walt and Jesse trying to poison Tuco with ricin. It all culminated in a massive shootout between Tuco and Hank Schrader, who is Walt's DEA agent brother-in-law.
Right. So Tuco is dead. Hank is the hero. But Walt and Jesse...
Yeah, where does that leave them?
Exactly. They're just 2 guys standing in the desert, traumatized, severely dehydrated, and miles away from home.
And that is exactly where Bit by a Dead Bee begins. The adrenaline of the shootout has completely faded, the sun is beating down on them, and now they have to face a problem that is arguably scarier than Tuco Salamanca.
The explanation.
Exactly. If they've been missing for days, their photos are on milk cartons, figuratively speaking, of course.
Right. Skylar is terrified. The DEA is heavily involved.
You cannot just walk back into your suburban life after being held hostage by a cartel boss and say, sorry, I'm late, traffic was murder.
Yeah, honey, took a wrong turn at Albuquerque.
Exactly.
No, that's not going to fly at all.
Yeah.
So the mission of this deep dive is to explore how 2 men who have just survived a harrowing kidnapping now have to survive the cover-up. It's a massive shift from physical survival to narrative survival.
And what we are really going to look at today is the divergence in their methods. This episode is just a perfect case study in the difference between Walter White and Jesse Pinkman.
I believe.
You have Walt, who tries to intellectualize his way out of trouble using the medical system, and you have Jesse, who has to rely on the gritty, street-level criminal code.
It's the Fugue State episode versus the Wendy episode.
That is a great way to put it.
So let's jump straight into segment 1, the master plan and the split. The episode opens immediately after the chaos. Walt and Jesse are walking through the desert. It's quiet, it's vast, and they look incredibly rough.
They look like they've been through a war. Because they have. And
Yeah.
This is the moment where the cold reality sets in. They have no car because Jesse's car is at the crime scene. They have no money. The DEA seized the cash found in the car.
They have literally nothing.
Nothing but the clothes on their backs, and even those are covered in dirt and blood.
And this is where we see the dynamic shift. In the previous episode, they were scrambling, reacting out of pure fear. But here, Walt snaps back into Heisenberg mode. Not the drug dealer, but the tactician, the general.
He really takes command. He assesses the situation and realizes that if they walk back into town together, they're finished. Their stories will never match up perfectly under interrogation.
It's the first rule of getting away with a crime, right? Separate the suspect.
Exactly. So he devises a plan to split up.
It's a strategic necessity. He tells Jesse to go one way and he will go another. But it's not just about physical separation, it's about assignment.
Yes.
Walt assigns himself the intellectual deception and gives Jesse the manual labor.
Typical Walt. I'll handle the high-level thinking, you handle the actual dirt.
Precisely. Walt decides that his cover story will be a fugue state. Now, We really need to unpack this term because it is the centerpiece of his entire defense.
Right. A dissociative fugue is a real psychiatric condition. It's rare, but it does happen. It involves a temporary loss of one's sense of personal identity and impulsive wandering away from home or work.
So he's basically going to pretend he has amnesia.
It's more complex than simple amnesia. Amnesia is, I forgot where I put my keys or what day it is. A fugue state is, I forgot who I am, and I walked 40 miles into the desert.
Wow, okay.
It's usually triggered by extreme stress or trauma. Walt figures this is a perfect alibi because it explains the missing time and it elicits sympathy.
It paints him as a victim of his own brain rather than a willing participant in a violent drug war.
Correct. But to sell a lie that big, you need a big performance. You can't just casually walk into a police station and say, "Who am I?" That looks completely staged.
All right.
You need to be discovered. You need to be a medical emergency.
So he hitchhikes back to town. He goes to a supermarket, a high-low market, I think it was.
Yeah, a very mundane, intensely family-friendly setting.
And he goes into the aisle and he takes his clothes off.
All of them.
Every single stitch. He is standing there, stark naked, right in the middle of the grocery store.
It is arguably one of the most shocking and memorable images of those early seasons.
I have to ask, and I think every viewer asks this, why the nudity? Why is that strictly necessary? Couldn't he just collapse? Couldn't he just sit on the floor and cry? Why the full Monty?
This is where we have to bring in some sociology, which is fascinating. There's a concept developed by the sociologist Talcott Parsons back in the 1950s called the sick role.
The sick role. Okay, lay it on us. What does that mean?
So Parsons argued that being sick is actually a form of social deviance.
Deviance, like breaking a rule.
Yeah, exactly. You aren't being a productive member of society when you're sick, but society grants you a pass, a socially sanctioned role if you meet certain criteria. You have to look like you can't help it, and you have to look like you want to get better.
Okay, so it's like an unspoken social contract.
Yeah.
I'm not lazy. I'm legitimately sick.
Exactly. Now, apply that directly to Walt. If he walks into that store fully clothed and starts acting weird and confused, what does he look like?
He looks like a drunk.
Yeah.
Or a junkie. Or maybe a vagrant causing trouble.
Right. And how does society treat drunks and vagrants in a supermarket?
They call security.
They call security, they call the cops. The cops come, they handcuff you, they throw you in the back of a squad car, and they start asking hard questions. What are you on? What's your name? Where do you live? It initiates a criminal justice response.
Which is the absolute last thing Walt wants.
But if you are a middle-aged white man, completely naked in a frozen food aisle, that short-circuits the criminal judgment. It triggers a primal response in the people watching. It screams vulnerability. It screams a complete mental break.
Right. It signals that the system needs to protect him, not arrest him.
Precisely. No one looks at a naked, confused, shivering man and thinks, I bet he just helped kill a drug dealer. They think, oh my God, someone get a blanket and call an ambulance immediately.
It forces the system to view him solely as a patient.
It completely bypasses the interrogation room and sends him straight to the emergency room. It creates this impenetrable medical firewall around him. It is a humiliating, deeply degrading calculation, but you have to admit it is absolutely brilliant. He strips himself of his dignity just to buy himself an ironclad alibi.
That is fascinating. He's actively hacking the social cues of society.
He is weaponizing the public's pity.
Wow. Meanwhile, let's check in on Jesse. Because while Walt is getting wrapped in warm hospital blankets and treated with care, Jesse is having a very, very different afternoon.
Jesse definitely draws the short straw here. He has the evidence elimination duty. He has to get back to his house.
Which, let's remember, was the site of a lot of illegal meth cooking.
It's essentially a hazmat site. He has to clean out the basement thoroughly, but the biggest problem by far is the RV, the crystal ship.
Ah yes, that beige behemoth.
That RV is a rolling probable cause. It's filled with glassware, chemicals, and meth residue. If the DEA finds that RV and links it to Jesse, it doesn't matter what story Walt is telling the doctors. The physical evidence will bury them both forever.
And the pressure on Jesse is so completely different. Walt is in a safe, controlled environment. Jesse is out in the wild. He knows that Hank Schrader is on a warpath. He knows the DEA is actively tearing the city apart, looking for Tuco's associates.
The clock is ticking so much louder for Jesse. Every siren he hears in the distance, every unmarked car that drives by, he thinks it's the feds coming for him. He has to find a way to make a giant 1986 bounder disappear, and he has to do it while constantly looking over his shoulder.
It really highlights the sheer disparity in their partnership, doesn't it? Walt protects himself with institutions, hospitals, doctors, the educated class. Jesse has to protect them both with raw manual labor and blind luck.
And that leads us perfectly into segment 2, Walter White's medical chess match, because getting into the hospital was just the opening move. Staying out of jail is the rest of the game.
So Walt is admitted. He's in the hospital bed. He's got the IV drip going, and he is stubbornly sticking to the script.
He is incredibly committed to the bit. He claims he has absolutely no memory of the last few days. He woke up in the supermarket. But here is where we really see Walt's arrogance start to bleed through the performance.
How so?
Well, he isn't content to just play the helpless patient. He tries to be the doctor, too. He starts suggesting complex diagnoses to the medical team.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. He blames the cancer meds.
He actually tells the doctors, maybe it's a severe reaction to my medication. Maybe the chemotherapy combined with the other pills caused some sort of chemical imbalance that wiped my memory.
And it's just dark.
It is incredibly dark. He is using his actual terminal illness, the very thing that makes everyone sympathize with him, as a physical shield to hide his violent criminal life. He's banking entirely on the fact that the doctors will look at a frail cancer patient and think, oh, the poor guy, his body is just failing him.
He thinks he can out-science his way out of it. He assumes if he gives them a highly plausible biological reason, they'll just nod, sign the discharge papers, and let him go home to his family.
But he hits a snag. A really big one.
Because doctors aren't stupid.
And they aren't rubber stamps. They are highly trained scientists, just like him. They run the toxicology screens. They do the extensive blood work. They rigorously check for the drug interactions he's suggesting. And nothing. The tests come back completely clean. There is no physiological reason for his fugue state whatsoever. His chemistry is fine, well, aside from the obvious cancer. But nothing physically explains taking off your clothes and walking naked through a supermarket.
So his grand intellectual plan totally backfires.
Completely. Because the doctors look at the charts and say, well, Mr. White, if this isn't physical, then it absolutely must be psychological. Exactly. The hospital formally deems him a risk to himself. They can't ethically or legally just release a man who loses days of time and wanders aimlessly. So they call in a psychiatrist. They explicitly threaten him with a mandatory 72-hour psychiatric hold.
That was a total disaster for Walt.
Yeah.
He wanted to be a medical patient, not a mental patient.
Right.
If he's locked in a psych ward, he's under constant 24/7 observation. He can't cook meth. He can't meet up with Jesse. He completely loses control of the narrative. He's trapped.
He walked right into a cage of his own making. So now he has to pivot hard. And this scene, the one-on-one scene between Walt and the psychiatrist, is, in my opinion, one of the best written scenes in the entire show.
Let's break it down. What exactly does he do?
He realizes the I don't remember act is getting him locked up.
Yeah.
So he decides to tell the truth, or rather, a carefully curated version of it.
He starts by checking the rules of the room, right?
Yeah. Yes. He explicitly asks the doctor about doctor-patient confidentiality. He says, does what we say in this room stay in this room? He needs to know the exact perimeter of his safe zone before he makes a move.
And once the doctor formally confirms it?
Walt just drops the entire act. It's chilling. His face changes instantly. The fog of confusion completely vanishes. He looks the psychiatrist dead in the eye, fully lucid, and admits that he remembers absolutely everything.
That is such a massive gamble.
Yeah.
If the doctor thinks he's lying just to cover up a major crime, couldn't he legally report it?
Confidentiality is very strong, but there are strict exceptions for imminent harm or admitting to specific violent crimes. But Walt treads the line perfectly. He doesn't confess to cooking meth. He doesn't confess to the cartel shootout or the kidnapping.
So what does he actually confess to?
He confesses to the feeling. He tells the doctor, I just wanted to get away.
I just wanted to get away.
He spins this incredibly compelling narrative about the crushing pressure he is under, the devastating cancer diagnosis, the overwhelming medical debt. The pregnant wife, the disabled son looking at him with pity every single day, the impending reality of death. He says he just desperately needed to escape his own life for a few days, to not be Walter White, cancer patient, for just one weekend.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. Is he actually lying?
That is the million-dollar question. And this taps into a concept psychologists call paltering.
Baltering. I haven't heard that term.
It's the active use of truthful statements to convey a deliberately misleading impression. Factually speaking, Walt is absolutely lying. He was kidnapped by a psychotic drug lord at gunpoint. He didn't go to a wellness spa to clear his head. But emotionally...
Emotionally, it feels completely true.
It feels incredibly true. Think about the pilot episode. Why did he break that in the first place? Yes, for the money to leave his family, but also for the agency, for the raw power. He really did want to get away from his mundane, powerless, deeply depressing reality. The meth empire is his twisted escape.
So when he tells the doctor, I just wanted to get away, he's actually tapping into his own real profound pain.
Exactly. He is using his genuine existential crisis as a smokescreen to cover up his criminal crisis. And because it comes from a place of very real emotion, the psychiatrist buys it hook, line, and sinker.
The psychiatrist just sees a broken, exhausted man who is completely overwhelmed by his own mortality. He doesn't see Heisenberg. He doesn't see a criminal mastermind.
He feels deep empathy, and that is Walt's true superpower. He actively weaponizes empathy. He turns the psychiatrist from a legal obstacle into a medical ally. The doctor agrees to release him, writing the whole thing off as a temporary stress-induced reaction.
He just talks his way right out of the cycle. It's honestly terrifying how incredibly good he is at this.
It is the definitive birth of the master manipulator.
Okay, so Walt has successfully navigated the complexities of the medical system. He is officially free. Now let's switch gears and go back to Jesse Pinkman.
Yeah.
Because his experience in segment 3 is, well, it's decidedly less intellectual.
Jesse definitely doesn't get the soft lighting and warm blankets of a hospital room. He gets the harsh, unforgiving, fluorescent glare of a DEA interrogation box.
How did the DEA even find him so fast? I mean, they were out in the middle of nowhere.
We have to remember that Hank Schrader is actually a very good cop. He was tracking Tuco Salamanca. He found Tuco because he had secretly put a LoJack, a GPS tracker, on Jesse's car because he thought Jesse was the one selling weed to Walt.
Right. The incredible irony of that. He was looking for a low-level pot dealer and stumbled into a massive cartel war.
Exactly. So after the massive shootout where Tuco dies, the DEA processes the scene and they have Jesse's car right there. They have all his money still in the car. They have forensics definitively placing him at the location. It's not just a hunch Hank has, it is hard, undeniable physical evidence.
So they haul Jesse in, and this is a classic sweat him scenario. You got Hank Schrader breathing right down his neck, demanding answers. Where were you? Why is your car at a cartel murder scene?
And Jesse has his alibi completely ready to go. But unlike Walt, who cites complex medical journals and drug interactions, Jesse cites, well, he cites Wendy.
Wendy alibi.
Yes. Jesse aggressively claims he was shacked up with Wendy, a local sex worker and known meth addict, for a wild party weekend. 3 straight days of nonstop partying at the Crossroads Motel.
And the crazy part is that she actually backs him up.
It perfectly highlights the stark difference in their available resources. Walt relies on the professional class, doctors, psychiatrists, people who are rigidly bound by institutional ethics. Jesse relies on the underclass, people totally on the margins of society who are bound by transactional loyalty or street-level fear.
But the DEA isn't buying it for a second. Hank knows Wendy, he knows exactly what she is, and he knows she's lying. He can practically smell the lie on Jesse.
Hank is incredibly frustrated. He absolutely knows Jesse is involved somehow, but he cannot legally break the alibi without a cooperating witness. So he decides to play his absolute trump card. He brings in the heavy artillery.
Hector Salamanca.
The old man in the wheelchair. Tio. Because he was there. He sat in that hot desert shack and watched Jesse and Walt actively try to kill his nephew. He watched them escape. He is the only living eyewitness to the entire thing.
By all logic, this should be the end of the road for Jesse Pinkman. Hector has every single reason in the world to completely destroy him. Jesse is responsible, whether directly or indirectly, for the death of the very last of the Salamancas.
The pure tension in this scene is palpable. They wheel Hector slowly into the interrogation room. Hank is feeling incredibly triumphant. He points straight at Jesse and asks Hector, is this the guy? Is this the guy who is at the house with Tuco?
Jesse looks like he's about to just pass out. He is practically shaking. He's so terrified.
And then the twist.
Hector completely refuses to identify him.
He just stares at Jesse. He stares coldly at Hank. And he does absolutely nothing.
This scene confuses so many people on a first watch. They always ask why. Why on earth save the guy who helped kill your beloved nephew? Is he going senile? Is he just scared of retaliation?
He is neither senile nor scared. This decision is entirely about the code. Specifically, the old-school criminal code, le M, the strict cartel rules of engagement.
Lay it out for us. How does that work?
Rule number 1 is very simple. You do not talk to the DEA. Ever. Under any circumstances whatsoever. Not to save yourself, not to get a lighter prison sentence, and definitely not to help them solve a crime.
Even if talking to them helps you get ultimate revenge on your worst enemy.
Especially then. If Hector openly talks to Hank, he is validating Hank's authority. He is actively participating in the American legal system. To a hardened man like Hector Salamanca, the DEA acts as an illegitimate occupying force. They are the ultimate overarching enemy.
So his deep-seated hatred for the DEA is actually vastly stronger than his personal hatred for Jesse.
Absolutely. To Hector, Jesse is just a bug, a completely insignificant gnat. But Hank represents the state. Hank represents the badge. Hector will not give Hank the satisfaction of his cooperation. He acts as if the question itself is a deep personal insult.
And he punctuates this defiance in the most visceral, utterly disgusting way possible.
He defecates in his wheelchair.
Yeah.
Right there in the middle of the interrogation room, looking Hank dead in the eye.
It is so incredibly gross, but when you analyze it purely as a nonverbal communication strategy, it's incredibly powerful.
It is the ultimate, undeniable act of disrespect. He is effectively turning the DEA's official interrogation room into a public toilet. He is saying very clearly, this is what I think of you, this is what I think of your law. It completely destroys the power dynamic of the room. Hank is repulsed. He has to physically leave. The interrogation is instantly over.
It's a massive power move, a very dirty, nasty power move, but a power move nonetheless.
But it works perfectly. Without Hector's eyewitness testimony and with Wendy's successfully corroborated alibi, the DEA legally has nothing. They're forced to cut Jesse loose.
So bringing this all together, both men successfully survive the cover-up. Walt survives by expertly manipulating the rules of the sick role and the complex medical system. Jesse survives entirely because of the rigid criminal code and the absolute silence of the cartel.
One uses the established system to hide, the other uses the anti-system to hide. But they both walk out of those doors as free men.
But free is a very relative term in this show, isn't it? Because that leads us directly into segment 4, the aftermath and consequences. Getting out of police custody isn't the same thing as being okay.
No, not at all. And Jesse is the one who really bears the brunt of the immediate real-world fallout here.
What exactly happens to him once he's out?
Well, the DEA officially seized all his money. His car is impounded for hard evidence. He can't go back to his house because the basement is a literal crime scene waiting to be discovered, and his parents actually own the house anyway, so he's locked out. He is essentially completely homeless and penniless.
He tries to reach out to his parents for help, doesn't he?
This scene breaks my heart every single time I watch it. He calls them, he's standing at a dingy payphone, and he just genuinely wants a safe place to crash, maybe a hot meal. He's exhausted.
And what do they say?
They completely shut him down. They don't even let him finish asking the question. They just say no and hang up.
That rejection just profoundly stings.
It emphasizes Jesse's complete isolation. I mean, contrast that directly with Walt. Walt goes home to Skylar and Walt Jr. They are hugging him. They are crying. Tears of sheer relief. They are making him breakfast. He is completely surrounded by love and familial support.
And Jesse just gets a cold dial tone.
It perfectly reinforces why Jesse is so incredibly vulnerable to Walt's ongoing manipulation. He has absolutely no safety net. He has burned every single bridge in the straight world.
Which naturally leads to their reunion.
Right, that night. They meet up in secret. The grand deception has actually worked. They are totally safe.
Now, a normal person, a truly rational person, would look at this terrifying situation and say, okay, we just miraculously cheated death. We almost got brutally murdered by a cartel boss. We almost went to federal prison for the rest of our lives. I'm out. I am completely done with this.
Any normal person would absolutely say that.
But Walt looks at Jesse and says, we cook.
It is genuinely chilling. He sees Jesse, who is physically broken, completely broke, deeply traumatized, and his first and only instinct is to drag him right back into the meth lab.
Why do you think he does that? Is it just purely the money? They do need the money?
It's the cycle of addiction, but not just a chemical addiction to the meth, because neither of them is actually using the product at this point. It's an intense addiction to the lifestyle, to the juice, as some people call it. Walt has tasted what it feels like to truly win. Think about it. He beat Tuco Salamanca. He beat the entire team of doctors. He beat the trained psychiatrist. He feels utterly invincible right now.
So instead of walking away, he doubles down.
He aggressively doubles down. He manipulates and convinces Jesse to continue cooking. It clearly shows that for Walt, this isn't just a temporary means to an end anymore. It is the end. It's what he wants to be doing.
And there is one more crucial detail in the aftermath that we have to mention before we move on. A very specific souvenir.
Yes. Hank Schrader back at the DEA station.
His colleagues throw him a little party and give him a gift to celebrate the big win against Tuco.
It's Tuco's grill. Those massive diamond-encrusted teeth.
Encased in a solid block of lucite. just sitting there like a paperweight.
It is grotesque. It's a literal trophy of immense violence. But you really have to pay attention to how Hank looks at it when no one else is around.
He does not look happy about it.
No, he doesn't. He looks deeply unsettled. That horrific violence is now just sitting right there on his desk, staring back at him every day. It's a brilliant foreshadowing that the severe trauma of this job, the PTSD, is going to start eating away at Hank from the inside, just like the actual cancer is eating away at Walt. It's not a heroic victory for him. It's a massive psychological burden.
Wow. Okay, so we've really covered the core narrative arc here. But Breaking Bad is universally recognized as a masterpiece of television production, so we really have to look under the hood. Let's dive into segment 5, production and reception.
This fantastic episode was written by Peter Gould.
An absolute legend in this universe.
He went on to heavily shape and co-create Better Call Saul. You can really see his specific fingerprints all over this episode, particularly the intense focus on legal versus illegal maneuvering and that signature pitch-black dark humor.
And it was directed by Terry McDonough.
With cinematography by the great Michael Slovis, we really have to take a moment to talk about the distinct visual look of this episode.
The colors in this show are always amazing, but here especially.
Slovis is famous for that highly distinctive, super saturated look. In this episode, you really need to notice the stark contrast. The outdoor desert scenes are heavily blown out, featuring harsh, aggressive yellows and blinding whites. It visually feels incredibly hot and uncomfortable to watch.
And then contrast that with the hospital scenes.
Cool, calming blues, incredibly sterile greens. Everything is in a much softer focus. It visually separates the two entirely different worlds Walt is actively navigating. The dangerous, sweltering hot criminal world and the safe, heavily sanitized sick rural world.
What did the critics actually make of it at the time it aired?
They absolutely loved it. It received near universal acclaim.
Give me the actual numbers.
Seth Amanen at IGN gave it a massive 9.7 out of 10. That is a near-perfect score for a TV episode.
9.7. I mean, that's getting into Ozymandias territory.
It is right up there. He specifically praised the intense focus on the psychological impact of the violence. He loved that the episode deliberately didn't just go for cheap action payoffs, but instead focused entirely on the heavy stress of maintaining the lies.
And Donna Bowman at the AV Club.
She gave it a solid A rating. She astutely noted how the show managed to make a simple scene about a guy cleaning a basement feel just as relentlessly tense as a cartel shootout.
It definitely holds up historically, too, looking back at the series as a whole.
It really does. The Ringer ranked it 40th out of all 62 episodes. Vulture ranked it 39th.
That's very solid. It's technically middle of the pack, but considering the insane competition is episodes like Crawl Space and Face Off, being in the top 40 is a massive badge of honor.
It's a classic bridge episode, but an incredibly crucial one. It does the essential heavy lifting of moving the main characters from being victims of circumstance to being active, willing perpetrators.
We also have to talk about the music. Breaking Bad is incredibly famous for its highly specific needle drops.
There are two massive, unforgettable tracks in this one. First, we have Feel Like Making Love by Bob James.
Ah, that classic, super smooth 70s track.
It plays during a key montage, I believe. The sheer irony of that smooth, incredibly sexy song playing over the deep, terrifying anxiety of their criminal situation perfectly creates that signature Breaking Bad dark comedy vibe.
But the big one, the one that really stays with you long after the credits roll, is Waiting Around to Die.
By the Be Good Tanyas.
Oof, just the title alone, Waiting Around to Die.
It prominently plays while Jesse is completely alone. He's just been brutally rejected by his own parents. He's sitting by himself on the curb. He has absolutely nothing and no one.
Let's look closely at the lyrics.
Well,
I don't know where I'm going, only know where I've been. I'm just waiting around to die.
It fits Jesse's internal psychological state perfectly. He feels entirely like a ghost in his own life. He isn't actually living, he's just existing day to day. He's just passively waiting for the next horribly bad thing to happen to him. It brilliantly captures that overwhelming sense of bleak hopelessness that inevitably drives him right back into Walt's toxic orbit.
It creates such an incredibly potent mood. You don't just watch Jesse's profound sadness on screen, you actively hear it.
It totally transforms the scene from a basic plot point into a deeply felt human tragedy.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's try to summarize the really big takeaways here. What are we actually learning from Bit by a Deadbeat?
I think the single biggest takeaway is the rapid evolution of the liar. Before this specific episode, Walt and Jesse were constantly just reacting. They were running away from threats. In this episode, they firmly become proactive, strategic deceivers.
They finally learn they can actually control the narrative.
Walt learns that society has massive, exploitable blind spots, like the sick role that he can safely hide inside. He learns that people desperately want to believe the best in him simply because he's a dying father.
Mm-hmm.
He learns exactly how to coldly exploit that goodwill.
And Jesse?
Jesse learns that the harsh criminal world has its own rigid code of protection. But he also learns the hard way that sticking to that specific code completely isolates him from the rest of the normal world.
It's a major turning point for both of them.
It is the definitive point of no return. This is exactly where the lie becomes the actual job. Once you fully realize you can look your loving wife, your son, and the federal law right in the eye and lie perfectly without flinching, you are incredibly dangerous.
And that leads perfectly to our Why It Matters moment.
This episode fully solidifies the permanent double life. It conclusively proves that Heisenberg isn't just a funny hat Walt occasionally wears out in the desert. It's a dominant persona that can easily infiltrate a crowded grocery store, a secure hospital, and a trained psychiatrist's office.
I want to leave all of you listening with that truly provocative thought we touched on earlier. When Walt sat there and told the psychiatrist he just wanted to get away.
That moment still haunts me.
We know for a fact he was technically lying just to get out of the hospital. But was that actually the most emotionally honest thing he has said all season?
You really have to wonder, is the massive meth business, is the constant lethal danger, is building the criminal empire, is that all just his twisted version of a vacation?
A violent vacation from a life of total mediocrity.
Exactly. Is he systematically destroying everyone around him just so he personally doesn't have to feel bored anymore? Is he constantly risking his life simply because playing the role of Walter White, the mild-mannered teacher, is just too suffocating?
Maybe the fugue state wasn't actually the lie at all. Maybe his entire mundane life as a high school chemistry teacher was the real fugue state, and Heisenberg is finally him waking up to reality.
That is the truly terrifying beauty of Walter White as a character. You never really know where the desperate performance ends and the real man begins.
And maybe, just maybe, the dead bee is the only thing that was ever truly innocent in this entire story.
A true victim of circumstance.
Thank you so much for joining us and listening to The Deep Dive. We really hope this gave you a brand new perspective on the incredibly intricate plotting and the profound psychological depth of Breaking Bad.
Always keep questioning the narrative.
See you next time.